Anhui Rural Commercial Bank President killed by security guard. Guangfa Bank Incident, CCP inevitably faces this crisis? Middle class collapse, high-end consumption crumbles, even pickled mustard greens can't sell? Wave of kindergarten closures in China, economy faces major crisis. CCP's comprehensive infiltration in Africa, political schools and satellite TV in 10,000 villages, success or misfire? CCP accelerates preparations, US holds 3 key cards. It's all covered in today's China Truths. Anhui Rural Commercial Bank President killed by security guard. On the morning of September 4th, at the Huayang branch of Hanshan Rural Commercial Bank in Mayanshan, Anhui, a security guard stabbed the branch manager to death. The guard, identified as Zhang, has since been apprehended, and the investigation is ongoing. The victim, identified as C, was under 40 years old and had 2 young children. He was pronounced dead at the hospital after unsuccessful emergency treatment. According to reports from Chinese media outlets, including the paper and Guangfa, videos of the incident were widely shared online by netizens. Authorities have urged the public to respect the deceased and refrain from spreading false information, videos, or images from the scene, to avoid further distress to the victim's family. The incident has sparked significant discussion on social media. A user on the X platform commented, "It's ironic, someone meant to protect became the attacker. This is not a good sign." Another remarked, "Judges, bank managers, security guards, police, the list of high-risk jobs is growing." Others pointed out, even before the pandemic, some influential voices warned that economic downturns and financial stress could trigger many problems, and public security has clearly worsened lately, with a surge in sudden incidents. This is the second fatal attack involving senior bank executives in China in less than 3 weeks. On August 15, Xing Zhiying, the chairman of Handan Bank in Hebei Province, was stabbed to death in his office at the Handan Bank building. The suspect, Song Hongtao, the former head of the Baigo branch of Handan Bank, was arrested at the scene. The incident caused public shock, and the motives behind the attack remain widely debated. Guangfa Bank Incident, CCP inevitably faces this crisis? China is on the brink of a financial crisis, according to scholars who argue that it's almost inevitable. Reports indicate that CCP officials, driven by shared interests, are hesitant to disrupt the status quo and have offered Xi Jinping poor advice. On September 2nd, the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, CCDI, stationed at China Life Insurance, along with the Tianjin Municipal Commission for Discipline Inspection, announced that Xiao Min, the deputy general manager leading Guangfa Bank's Beijing Regional Audit Center, is under investigation for serious disciplinary violations and legal issues. This follows the unexpected resignation of Liu Jin, president of the Bank of China, at the end of last month, an event seen as a potential warning sign of a looming crisis in China's banking system. Now, Guangfa Bank, a major commercial bank headquartered in Guangzhou, faces its own troubles. The unfolding situation has raised questions among netizens about the involvement of discipline inspection teams across sectors. Why was Xiao Min, from a bank, apprehended by a team stationed at an insurance company? And why is the Tianjin Commission for Discipline Inspection involved in Beijing matters? Such complexities highlight how financial risks are intricately linked across sectors, suggesting that a collapse in banking could drag down insurance companies as well, creating a cascading crisis. Experts have long warned that China's real estate collapse could trigger a broader financial meltdown, driven by the escalating local debt crisis. Liang Jing, in a commentary published by Radio Free Asia on September 3, said that a large-scale financial crisis in China is not a matter of if, but when. The critical uncertainty is whether this crisis will rapidly spiral out of control, causing global repercussions potentially worse than the pandemic. Liang Jing points out that the CCP is resorting to unbacked money printing to stave off a sharp decline in fiscal and tax revenues, making the financial crisis unavoidable. While the potential for widespread turmoil looms, there are a few glimmers of hope. China's economic downturn is fostering a collective rethinking among its citizens. Rapid internal changes in the US and Western countries are increasing scrutiny on China, potentially pushing it towards reform. Xi Jinping's inability to pursue aggressive actions like a military move on Taiwan could favor internal reform. And historical patterns suggest that once China sets a clear reform direction, changes can happen swiftly. Reform in China is seen as crucial to preventing the financial crisis from causing global damage. However, alternative views exist within the CCP. Independent commentator Jiang Xinjia shared in a recent live stream his discussions with some elites in China, who proposed that the ruling class could contribute a portion of their wealth anonymously to help the authorities overcome the fiscal crisis. This approach echoes historical precedents where Chinese dynasties, facing financial distress, requested voluntary donations from officials, known as contributing for the cause. For example, during the late Qing dynasty, officials were asked to donate for Empress Dowager Cixi's birthday, and in the late Ming dynasty, Emperor Chongzhen solicited funds from officials, though unsuccessfully, as they refused to contribute. Jiang Xinjia remains doubtful of this contribution strategy, arguing that if the surrendered funds end up in the hands of another group of elites, it would be pointless. Historically, when the CCP faces financial shortfalls, they often resort to confiscations, typically targeting ordinary citizens first. Earlier this year, social media reports indicated that numerous business owners and shareholders of listed companies were detained for questioning by the police, who bluntly stated, "Pay 3 million yuan to secure your release, or face detention, interrogation, and sleep deprivation." As to whether the CCP's tactics will successfully mitigate the crisis, the world is watching closely. Middle class collapse, high-end consumption crumbles, even pickled mustard greens can't sell? China's economy continues its downward slide, with the middle class collapsing and the restaurant industry struggling. Recent half-year reports from major companies reveal an unusual trend: low-end consumption, which typically rises during economic downturns, isn't picking up as expected. Fuling jiatsai, a type of pickled mustard green in a popular traditional Chinese preserved vegetable product, reported a 2.32% year-on-year drop in revenue to 1.306 billion yuan, about $183.6 million, and a 4.74% decline in net profit to 448 million yuan, about $63 million, in the first half of the year, indicating that even pickled mustard greens are not selling well. Shanghai-based financial media S&D noted that leading consumer brands either faced sharp profit declines or incurred losses, which is understandable given the economic climate. However, Fuling jiatsai's poor performance is baffling, as pickled mustard greens are usually seen as a staple during tough times. This contradicts the Jiffin effect, where demand for cheaper staples rises even when prices go up, as seen during the 1845 Irish famine with potatoes. S&D questioned why the expected boost in sales didn't happen for products like instant noodles and ham sausages paired with pickled mustard greens. Shuanghui's revenue also fell 9.8% in Q2, with net profit dropping 24% to 1 billion yuan. If such basic goods are struggling, it's unclear what is selling well. Amid the economic downturn, China's social structure is also shifting. Experts warn that when both the middle class and the poor feel the economic strain, the situation is dire. The sharp decline in high-end dining signals the collapse of China's fake rich class, high-earning, debt-ridden individuals who thrived during the real estate boom but are now struggling under the weight of layoffs and high mortgages. These so-called fake rich often have jobs in finance, internet, or tech sectors, and they bought properties at peak prices in major cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen. Their financial stability, like China's inflated economy, is precarious, relying heavily on debt. A single job loss can turn their mortgage into an insurmountable burden, and finding new employment is challenging due to their age. These middle-class individuals, once focused on improving their quality of life, are now grappling with basic survival. The article highlights that this group, once the backbone of society, is now facing severe challenges. Notably, data shows a 49.7% increase in food delivery workers in Beijing in the first half of the year, prompting concerns that some of these new delivery drivers might be former high-end restaurant patrons, a sobering reflection of the economic turmoil. Wave of kindergarten closures in China. Economy faces major crisis. China is facing a major economic crisis as the country's declining birth rate leads to a wave of kindergarten closures. High childcare costs and a negative attitude towards marriage and having children among young people are significant factors driving this trend. Recent reports indicate that many kindergartens across China have been forced to shut down due to a decreasing number of children. According to the Chinese Ministry of Education, the number of kindergartens dropped by 20,000 between 2021 and 2023, from 294,832 to 274,480. Local government-run kindergartens are also merging, and even long-standing private institutions are struggling to stay afloat. Some have resorted to drastic measures, such as principals taking on additional roles to cut costs. A representative from a kindergarten admissions office explained that closures are largely due to the inability to attract new students and cover operating expenses like rent, driven by the broader economic environment. Data from Chinese authorities reveals that the number of married couples in the first half of this year has plummeted by 12.7% compared to last year, hitting a new low. This signals a worsening demographic crisis in China. Professor Xia Tian from the Aiken School of Business at the University of South Carolina warned that the decline in childcare services and related activities could significantly impact the broader economy. He noted that this effect will grow more severe over time, potentially leading to labor shortages in the next decade or two. Experts also cautioned that a shrinking workforce will reduce the number of contributors to Social Security and pension funds, which may result in lower tax revenues and, eventually, pension shortfalls or even bankruptcy, affecting the elderly. A resident of Chengdu, Sichuan, Ms. Wang, expressed her concerns. The government's systemic issues, rooted in corruption and authoritarianism, are the core reasons behind these challenges. Without meaningful changes, these problems will persist. CCP's comprehensive infiltration in Africa, political schools and satellite TV in 10,000 villages, success or misfire? The CCP is pushing forward a comprehensive infiltration into Africa under the guise of development assistance, aimed at strengthening its international influence and expanding its propaganda reach. This includes significant investments in education and infrastructure across African nations, such as installing satellite TV in nearly 10,000 villages and establishing political schools. To date, more than 9,600 villages in 23 African countries have received satellite TV equipment, transforming local interaction with the outside world. Chinese dramas and movies have become a part of everyday life, with some viewers saying they can't sleep without catching up on their favorite shows. However, locals are required to pay subscription fees, which are often costly for them. According to BBC reports, this initiative is funded by the CCP and operated by the Chinese private company StarTimes, which handles both infrastructure development and channel management. Through StarTimes, the CCP broadcasts content that extends its influence across Africa, while StarTimes profits by charging subscription fees. The content primarily features Chinese TV dramas, kung fu films, and news from the CCP's English-language channel CGTN. A local girl told the BBC that she started watching StarTimes 4 years ago, enjoying a 6-month free period before the need to pay for a subscription. Those who don't subscribe are limited to only a few free channels. An African village chief described the costs as quite high, noting that many locals struggle to afford them. The cheapest package costs around $2.96 per month. A scholar researching StarTimes' impact on Africa pointed out to the BBC that due to the subscription fees, the project has not met the CCP's goal of regularly engaging viewers with Chinese content. He noted that while new satellite dishes are visible on rooftops, it hasn't necessarily shifted local perceptions of China. Critics online have expressed skepticism, stating, Beijing aims to embed its values in Africa's cultural and ideological landscape, but that's easier said than done. In a bid to further expand its influence, the CCP is also setting up political schools across Africa. In May, the CCP in Kenya agreed to establish a cadre school in Nairobi, the capital. Previously, the CCP invested $40 million to open the Mwalimu Julius Nyerere Leadership School in Kibaha, Tanzania, named after the nation's founding father, which became operational in 2022. Kenyan professor and African international relations expert Chacha Nyagati told Voice of America that the CCP's extensive investment in education and infrastructure has profoundly impacted Africa. He noted, China is doing this to compete for global influence and is positioning itself as a world power, gradually displacing and undermining U.S. interests on the continent. To fuel its infrastructure expansion, the CCP has significantly increased loans to African nations in recent years. A study by Boston University reveals that from 2000 to 2023, the CCP extended $182.28 billion in loans to Africa. However, Professor Nyagati said that debt traps have weakened the benefits Africa gains from Chinese investment. Chinese loans are very expensive, and the cost of some projects supported by China on the African continent exceeds what African countries might pay if they used other financing channels. CCP accelerates preparations, U.S. holds 3 key cards. In a strategic move, CCP leader Xi Jinping has called for building national strategic reserves and backups for key industries, hinting at preparations for major upheavals. This decision was highlighted at the CCP's 20th Central Committee's third plenary session, signaling a clear shift in China's approach to safeguarding its core interests. Analysts explain that strategic reserves are areas that can act as immediate backups in the event of significant disruptions, while backing up key industries aims to prevent vulnerabilities and ensure resilience in critical situations. This strategy mirrors past actions, like the U.S. during World War II, where defense production was distributed across states to reduce risks. Now, China is looking to decentralize its concentrated industrial base in the east, moving key sectors westward to areas like Sichuan and Chongqing. This move aligns with recent announcements from Xi Jinping, who at a late August Politburo meeting pushed for further development in western regions, including Chongqing and Sichuan. Some observers see this as part of a broader war preparation strategy, linking Western development to the creation of strategic reserves and industrial backups. According to reports from Hong Kong 01, the third plenary session decision includes 2 critical points: accelerating the development of strategic deterrence forces, widely understood to mean nuclear capabilities, and establishing national strategic reserves and industry backups. This echoes the Third Front construction of the Mao era, aimed at fortifying the country against external threats. As U.S.-China relations worsen and global instability rises, Beijing appears to be bracing for extreme scenarios. Xi Jinping's calls for domestic readiness and war preparations have been growing since last year, drawing significant attention. Commentator Ma Jianghua noted that both China and the U.S. are stockpiling resources. This year, U.S. West Coast ports have seen record container throughput, while China has been stockpiling essentials like food, oil, and natural gas. However, Ma points out that while the U.S. stockpiling is largely driven by private businesses anticipating tariff impacts, China's actions reflect a state-driven strategy focusing on strategic resources vital for resilience in conflict. Despite the CCP's preparations, the U.S. holds several strategic options to counter China without military conflict. Veteran journalist Yan Chuango highlighted in a recent commentary on U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan's visit to China that the U.S. has at least 3 powerful cards. First, exposing the overseas wealth of CCP elites, which could shake the regime's foundations. Second, revoking China's access to dollar settlements, potentially crippling its trade. Third, establishing formal ties with Taiwan, putting immense pressure on Beijing. Yan Chuango argues that the CCP is cautious of these moves, while the U.S. seeks to avoid direct conflict over issues like the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait. However, he predicts that a clash between the US and China is likely, especially after Russia's anticipated defeat. As the world watches, these developments underscore the escalating tensions and strategic calculations on both sides. Don't forget to comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. If you find the information helpful, please share this video with a friend to watch together. This will be a great source of motivation for our team to produce more and more quality and reliable videos. And also don't forget to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths. Thank you for tuning in.